Thank you.
بشكل عام. في البداية اسمحوا لي أن أتقدم بالشكر الجزيل لمجموعة الرؤية الاستراتيجية روسيا العالم الاستراتيجي.
First of all, I would like to express gratitude for the invitation. I worked as a Minister of Information in Bahrain, but I am a journalist in the first place, and I have been working in this sphere for a long time. Bahrain is a group of islands in the Persian Gulf, and though it is a small state, it is the object of terrorist attacks, extremist attacks. And here we see that various forces in the region provide assistance. They provide weapons and financing to these extremists, as well as ideological support. And the territory of Bahrain constantly receives a huge amount of weapons. We did not witness a similar phenomena in the past. Terrorism is a new phenomenon, a new global phenomenon, which has been particularly active in the past decade. There are a number of reasons for that. To explain why this phenomenon has been growing. We have already touched upon this in our speeches. The reasons are geopolitical ones. There are also changes in the Arab world. That's another reason. And starting with the events of 9/11, 2001, when the Twin Towers were attacked, blown up in New York, this tendency has been on the rise. And we are witnessing it in various forms. The United States declared a war on terror, and it started as an incentive, a push for these organizations to become more active. Our region is subjected to this terrorist activity. We must understand how, in a democratic way, we can transform our region into a peaceful one. We see that Iraq is practically destroyed, and it was clean of terrorism before 2003. And now it turned into a country exporting terrorists. We see many criminal groups acting in Iraq, which provide financing, supplies, logistics to terrorists. And what is happening now is the extermination of a number of countries in our region. We know what happened in 2011. We know the consequences of the so-called Arab Spring. And this is elimination, extermination of state structures which used to be stable and firm. We know of the events in Libya. And we know about the terrorist activities all over the region.
And the supplies of arms continue, and the financing continues for these terrorist groups, despite the international efforts to prevent or at least rein in these kind of activities. At the same time, there is an important thing to note, and that is the plan for a geopolitical redivision of our region, for a geopolitical reshuffle in our region, using those terrorist groups as muscle. Those terrorist groups didn't just spring up all by themselves. There were certain forces that bred and supported them, provided them with what they needed. We can speak of an all-out, tacit war being waged in our region. And a number of governments must admit that they have contributed to this phenomenon of global Islamic terrorism, that they aided and supported some of those groups. We know that many terrorists these days, a lot of the terrorists have never had an opportunity to get an education, because a lot of the rank and file terrorists, they come from the poorest communities. And these days, now that they have been recruited, they don't even care for education. They don't want any education anymore. We also know that young people from Muslim communities in Europe are also actively being recruited into terrorist groups, and it's important for us to know their backgrounds, where they come from, what countries their parents originally came from, what countries they come from these days, what is their social background. Today, terrorist groups go out of their way to mobilize and recruit new members, and they use media tools very actively, including digital media. The events in Tunisia and in European countries, in Germany, France, and other countries, it all points to the fact that even areas that never used to be affected by terrorist attacks in the past, such as Europe, which, unlike the Arab world for a time, was isolated from terrorism, these days they find themselves increasingly after attack. There are other issues at play here as well: drug trafficking, various illegal activities, political instability, and you cannot downplay the role of mass media and media organizations in Muslim countries in particular. And of course, we need to uncover the deep-lying sources of that actually support the spread of radical ideas, the issues that actually fuel the spread of those ideas and that sentiment, and we must work to prevent them from aggravating. We know the relationship between the United States and the Muslim world, what has happened after the U.S. withdrew its troops from Iraq, how ISIS spread, how Syria and Iraq have suffered from this lack of a strong government, how Libya has essentially lost its statehood and its nationhood, where it's been split into several areas, each governed by its own government, and so far it's been impossible. There's been unsuccessful efforts to reunite these different territories into a single nation. Terrorists have taken every effort they can to gain new ground, to gain control of new territories. You could see them as a strong, vast war machine that was created specifically and designed to spread all across the Arab world. If it continues on the same note, it could